communicating with players these days seems like it's really a bit of a chore. You've got everybody on different schedules. You may not necessarily work together. You may not go to school together. You may not even hang out in the same social circles, depending on who your gaming group is and what kind of play you have. So how do you keep in touch with players? Well, fortunately, we have a crap ton of technology available to us these days. And so I wanted to talk about some of the things that I have done that I found work really well. Not just methods of communication as far as like platforms and the like, but ways to communicate, how to utilize those aspects to better, really engage your players and build your game when you may not be able to meet all the time, or you may not have a lot of time at the table. So I won't explain what social media options are out there. I feel that pretty much everybody who's going to be watching this is well aware, and which one you choose doesn't really matter. There are certainly all sorts of platforms that allow you to communicate both long form and short form messaging, groups and the like. So what I tend to do is I tend to use Messenger and Facebook in my case to communicate primarily, and then I'll also use like direct text messaging through my phone and stuff like that when need be. So overall, anytime I'm running a campaign, I create a group on Facebook for that. This is a place where people can communicate with one another. We can discuss what we're bringing to potluck. We can discuss questions from the previous game, and that way it's open and out in the air, and everybody can contribute. Because in many cases, it doesn't have to be a player to DM conversation. It can be player to player. It helps me as a DM to not have to necessarily answer every question, especially the smaller, minor ones where it could just be that somebody missed something or forgot about how much XP or what was the name of that NPC in the last session. Invariably, there's some player who has that information and can share that with the other player. This allows me as the DM to go in and to use that group for more advanced communication, setting up adventures, asking for player feedback, having everybody define their downtime, and that's just kind of a few of the things I do. So like after every session, for example, or every adventure, for example, when the players get to that point where they're done, I will start up a discussion in the group, asking what the group's intention is. If their intent is to go back to the local town and just kind of hang out, I ask them how long they want to hang out, and I ask them to declare any downtime activities that they're doing, any kind of researches, training, carousing, whatever they're going to do. If it's something specifically out of the Xanathar's book, I make them responsible for going and doing the money outlay and everything like that. That way, we can do that away from the table, and we don't have to wait till the next session to get that all out of the way and then take up valuable adventure time. This also helps me decide where the players are at when I start that next adventure. If there is a rumor or something that they want to follow, let's say they find a map in a dungeon somewhere, or they remember a rumor that they heard the last time they stopped in a village, and they would like to go to that place rather than back to town, they want to go straight there from the last dungeon, the last adventure, then I know what adventure I need to either pull out from what I already have prepped, or what adventure I need to make some prep notes for. It's also a place where the players can have dialogue between their characters. And in-character discussion that is nothing more than discussion between the characters can easily be conducted as a thread on a forum or a group, a social media group, and allow the players to get to know each other's characters, and for their characters to develop those bonds that might also detract from valuable table time. So the groups are very valuable that way. You can post surveys. I just posted a survey today on how people were feeling about the last adventure I ran. It was the first time running this sort of an adventure in the campaign, and I just kind of wanted to get a feel for how it was received. But you can, as a DM, you should always use these groups for feedback. Ask your players specifically about things that you felt went right or wrong. If you ever have a gut feeling that maybe you didn't hit the right note at a certain time, throw it out there. Your players will certainly communicate with you, but be specific. If you leave it general, they're just going to be really vague. But yes, the groups are good for that. It is also a good place for me as a DM, to post lore. I will often take a picture or or a place on the map that they know of, that the players would know of, the characters I should say would know of, and I'll do a little snippet about it. 2-3 paragraphs, nothing big. Pick a picture off of Pinterest or whatever that illustrates it nicely. Pictures will always grab your players' attentions. You can do this with NPCs. If there is an NPC that they've been meeting a lot, and you have a picture in mind, post it up there and give them a little bit of a bio piece on him. Even if it may be a little meta, it's not going to kill the game. They're not going to suffer for it, and you're not going to suffer unless there's a secret, and then you just don't put it in the biopic. So yes, the groups are a enormously helpful method for communicating with your party, with your players, and keeping things on track. You can post files to those groups in a lot of cases, so it's also good to have handy maps that they should all have on hand. Magic items that you've given to players, you could always post them there so that they can always refer back to them if need be. They may not be able to get to their Google Drive, or they may not have the device that they stored that on, but almost everything they're going to have is going to be able to access Facebook. And it makes a handy backup also. If I, as the GM, have forgot my tablet or my laptop at home and I can't access my material, I at least have it there as well. So texting and messaging. So they're both one and the same. I mean, just different route. Texting, of course, being phone to phone. And I often do texting during play. It's kind of the modern day version of the yellow Post-it note. Some of my players like to ask me questions on the down low. Everybody knows what's going on when they hear my phone vibrate, but nobody knows exactly who texted each other. Although, it's usually the guy who's sitting there with his thumbs in his phone. It doesn't detract from the game as long as it's kept to a minimum. You might have, for example, a player who's playing a cleric or a paladin, even a warlock or something, who is in constant dialogue with a deity or a patron or something like that. And this is a good way for you to allow them that internal dialogue without having to telegraph it to the rest of the table. Now, if your players are okay doing that, that's fine. You don't need to do the messenger, but that's okay. But also, messaging is great for throwing out just real quick, sporadic communications where you don't necessarily want to throw up anything on the group. Often, I will get critiques or feedback from my sessions from my players by just doing group texts rather than posting something on the group and kind of muddying up the channel. Once you get all this together, it's a great idea to also do events. If you have a group that allows you to post events, post your sessions as events. And even if it's a regularly scheduled thing, it's not going to hurt to have an event posting, just because people can get busy, they can get caught up doing stuff, and it may slip their mind until the last minute. And if you're like our group and we do potlucks for our food, having a couple of days notification to remind you that, I gotta stop and get chicken or whatever it is on Monday. It's a good way to do that as well. So what else can you do? Well, there's always email. Email is also good. If you have really long form one-on-one stuff to communicate to your players, don't forget email. In modern day society, it's really easy to get caught up in just IMing and posting on social media, but email is still a thing, and it's still certainly a way to communicate long, detailed information to a player and have them be able to print it out and have a permanent record pretty easily. But also it allows them to reply to you with some thought and not with the worry that the rest of the players will see it. So a good example for when to use an email might be to expand upon a moment that happened in a campaign. Let's say you have a situation where a character has a vision, and you as the DM, for the sake of economy at the table, you give them a vivid description of it, but you really feel like there was more that you could have communicated to the player, or maybe it seemed like the player didn't get everything from that vision. You could email them a longer form, more detailed form of what it is that they saw, or what it is that they heard, or what have you. If you have a player that has a particular plot point or story direction in mind for their character, it is also a good way to communicate and plan that. Emails are good. You can give each of one of your characters in your party their own folder, so you can really organize all the emails coming through. You can have the party folder, and each of the characters can have their own folder. That way, if you find yourself needing to go back and look at information for a particular plot point or story or element of their background, you have it there. You could even put their backgrounds. Have everybody email you their character background. You can just tuck it away in a folder. That way it's always available. Now, OneNotes are good. If you're particularly up on that kind of software, which I am not. OneNotes, Google Docs, Group Google Docs, those are all good. I have a Google Doc, but it's mostly DM stuff because I post all my, I type all my adventures and stuff on there so I can access it from whatever computer I'm at or my phone. But you could always have a folder in your folder that is available for the players to post and reference. You could put the stuff in there. There's all sorts of things you can do. I mean, you could set up a Discord for your group. There's whatever works best for you and your players is the way to go. It's just, don't forget that communication is key in this hobby. And when you are trying to better your story, better your adventures, utilize that information that you can get through these communication routes, and utilize the communication routes themselves just to enhance it. Sometimes it's nothing more than just posting a little blurb on a bit of lore. Oh, there's this phenomenon in this game world called Witchwood, and you describe what Witchwood is. Now, that doesn't necessarily telegraph an adventure, but now your players have a part of the world that they can reference. Maybe their character is a woodsman, and the next time you run the game and somebody fails their navigation check or their wilderness check or whatever, and the party is now off track and lost, that player may have their character muse about perhaps being swept up in the Witchwood, and who knows how long they're going to be lost. You can utilize these routes to really just build the flavor of the game. Again, a lot of times it's hard to have those chats and stuff that you used to have when you were younger playing. When I was a kid, and when I was in my teens and even my early 20s, everybody I played with was right there. In my 20s, I was living with the other people I played with. They were my roommates. When I was younger than that, when I was in my teens and when I was in grade school and stuff, when I was playing, all my friends were on the block. We were all hanging out with each other all the time anyways. Nowadays, yes, most of the players in my game are my work buddies, but I don't have many opportunities to hang out with them outside of work. And when I'm at work, I'm working. What the type of work I do, we're really not allowed. We're not so much even allowed. We're not able to. There's just no time to interact except for on breaks and stuff. But I mean, very rarely are you in an office space where your breaks line up with your office buddies perfectly, and then they may be your gaming buddies too, but you may not be able to talk to them at work. So texting and Facebook groups and or Google Hangouts or whatever it is that you use is the way that you do that. When I'm not at work, I have to go home because I have family. And so if I'm not in the garage making videos for you folks, I'm usually hanging out with my family or working on other projects, writing adventures, sculpting, painting, whatever it is. I've got stuff I do, but if I have a channel or channels of communication open for my group, if a thought hits me, I can pick up my phone, I can open up the group there, I can get on my computer, and I can get that idea out while it's fresh in my mind. And this isn't really about this isn't an element of communication, but it is a resource for the DM keep a DM's journal. I keep a DM's journal with me in my work bag, and that goes with me pretty much anytime I'm on vacation or I'm going to go anywhere that I know is going to be boring. It's a sketchbook. It's a place to put down maps. It's a place to put down adventure ideas, write down monster concepts, and that way whatever thought occurs to me whenever, it gets put into that notebook, and I can recall it easy because it's all in one place. So, communication, it can be tricky, but it doesn't have to be. The interwebs and all of the wonderful technology of the modern age has provided us countless methods by which we can communicate with our players. How do you communicate with your players? Go ahead and communicate with me. Go ahead and leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit the like button, share this video for folks that you may know who might be struggling with communication. Subscribe to the channel if you're just coming here the first time. You can communicate with me on Twitter. I am Elfbait there. You can communicate with me on Facebook, where we have the Elfbait Facebook group. I'm also on there as myself, Eli, and last name is Arndt, Eli Arndt. Whatever. It's not like I'm not all over the interwebs from my earlier days in wargaming. But then also there is the Elfbait Google email address, which is baittheelf@gmail.com. Again, want to thank you for checking out the video. Hopefully my communication has helped you with your communication. Let's stop communicating so you can get out and game, and have a good one.